I came to speak to the version of you that keeps starting over. The version of you that's tired of quitting but doesn't know how to keep going. The version of you that's gifted but undisciplined, called but inconsistent, anointed but easily distracted. You don't need another prophecy. You need a plan. You don't need another open door. You need the strength to walk through the one you've already been given. Every single day, see, we talk a lot about favor. We preach about purpose. We shout over destiny, but nobody wants to talk about the grind, the repetition, the obedience, the quiet hours where nobody sees you praying, nobody sees you building, nobody sees you crying and still choosing to show up. That's where true power lies, not in the moment you arrive, but in the moments you refuse to give up. This is not a cute message. This is a surgical word, a word for the woman who keeps asking God, why am I stuck? A word for the man who keeps hearing called, but keeps living comfortable. A word for the soul who's been gifted the vision, but can't seem to maintain the habits. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You just haven't yet forced yourself to be consistent, and tonight we're breaking the cycle. Tonight, we are going to dig into the soil of inconsistency and plant the seeds of discipline. Not the kind of discipline that shames you, but the kind that awakens you. The kind that reminds you your future is not in tomorrow, it's in what you choose to do today. So if you're ready to stop restarting, if you're ready to stop sabotaging what you prayed for, if you're ready to become the version of yourself that your destiny is waiting on, then let's go all in. This is your wake-up call. Consistency is not about comfort, it's about covenant. A covenant is not based on how you feel, it's based on what you vowed. It's a decision that says, I may not always feel strong, I may not always feel motivated, but I will show up because I made a commitment. And so many of us are breaking promises not just to other people, but to ourselves. You made a promise to heal. You made a promise to grow. You made a promise to leave that toxic pattern behind. But every time the pressure rises, you default to comfort. Every time the wind picks up, you step back into survival instead of leaning into strategy. What if your inconsistency isn't a flaw in your character, but a result of your fear of being uncomfortable? Because if we're honest, we like results but not resistance. We like progress, but we hate process. We ask God for elevation, but keep running from the habits that build strength. God doesn't elevate inconsistent people because inconsistency can't carry weight. It can't carry glory. It can't carry responsibility. You've been asking for a new level, but God's been asking for a new level of discipline. Not when you feel it, not when it's easy, not when the room is clapping. But when it's quiet, when it's hard, when it's dry, when it doesn't make sense. Consistency is not birthed in convenience. It's born in resistance. You build consistency when you choose to keep showing up even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because that's the test, that's the proving ground. Can you steward the small? Can you show up for the ordinary? Can you pour into what doesn't yet look like a miracle and still believe God is working? You don't get to break through without going through the boring. You don't get to run with vision if you won't walk with discipline. You have to be willing to get uncomfortable and stay uncomfortable. You have to stop letting your feelings talk you out of your assignment. Stop letting tiredness, laziness, or comparison steal what consistency was supposed to build. You want to walk in power, but power requires persistence. You want influence, but influence requires internal integrity, and integrity is formed in the daily decisions nobody sees, the private choices, the hidden sacrifices, the battles you win when no one's cheering. That's where consistency lives. That's where the covenant breathes. Some of us are praying for change while avoiding the work that creates it. We're blaming the enemy when it's really just our lack of follow-through. The enemy didn't steal your progress. You gave it away by quitting. You abandoned the process because you didn't see instant results. But God doesn't move on our timeline. He moves on our obedience. He's not measuring how fast you move. He's measuring how faithful you are. Are you still consistent when it's slow? Are you still consistent when you don't understand? Can you still trust God with the part that looks unfruitful? Because fruitfulness always follows faithfulness. God will not bless what you abandon. He will not multiply what you neglect. If you want the oil, you have to crush the olive. If you want the platform, you have to build the foundation. This is not about being perfect, it's about being planted. A planted person shows up no matter the season. A planted person prays when they don't hear answers. A planted person works when they don't feel seen. Because consistency is not driven by applause, it's driven by assignment. When you know what God told you, you keep building. Even when the wood gets heavy, you keep walking. Even when the crowd disappears, you keep serving. Even when no one claps. That's the kind of consistency that heaven honors. That's the kind of consistency that produces fruit. That's the kind of consistency that releases favor. We keep asking God to do his part, but have you done yours? Have you been consistent with what you already have? Are you managing the little with excellence, or are you waiting for something big to give your best? Because how you handle small doors determines whether God can trust you with big ones. How you show up in the shadows reveals who you'll be under the spotlight. It's not about what they say. It's not about what they see. It's about who you become in the process. You're not just building a life. You're building a rhythm, a discipline, a pattern that trains your spirit, molds your character, and strengthens your resolve. This is the covenant, not with people, not with platforms, but with purpose. And purpose requires that you keep showing up, especially when it hurts, especially when it's hard, especially when no one understands. Because you understand, you know the weight of your calling, you know the cost of your oil, and you know the price of inconsistency is too high. So you choose covenant over comfort. You choose growth over excuses. You choose discipline over distraction. And in that choosing, you become consistent, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary, because the destiny you've been praying for won't be delivered on feelings. It will be delivered on faithfulness. You will never heal what you won't confront daily. Healing isn't a one-time prayer, a single journal entry, or a moment of emotional release. Healing is a decision you make over and over again to show up and deal with what broke you. To stop ignoring it, to stop dressing it up, to stop pretending it doesn't hurt. We keep asking God to take the pain away, but healing doesn't happen in avoidance. It happens in confrontation. Every scar has a story, and you've got to be willing to face yours to truly be free. There are cycles that keep repeating because you keep running from the root. You put a filter over your brokenness and call it peace, but God sees past the surface. He sees the patterns you've normalized. He sees the trauma you've spiritualized. He sees the dysfunction you've baptized as personality. And he's not judging you, but he is calling you to grow. Growth can't happen in places you won't touch. Deliverance doesn't dwell in denial. Freedom doesn't live in fantasy. It's not about pretending you're okay. It's about being real enough to admit you're not, and being brave enough to show up again anyway. Healing requires consistency. It's not just about what you pray for, it's about what you practice. You can't pray for peace but keep feeding your anxiety. You can't ask for clarity but refuse to be still. You can't seek transformation and keep protecting your triggers. Your daily decisions are either helping you heal or keeping you hostage. That's why God doesn't just bless desire, he blesses discipline. Do you have the discipline to sit with your emotions without letting them control you? Can you identify the wound without becoming it? Can you stop blaming everyone else and look in the mirror long enough to ask, what in me still needs to be made whole? We love to talk about healing in hindsight. We love the testimony once it's wrapped in a bow. But the truth is, healing is ugly, it's messy, it's layered. Some days you feel like you're over it, and the next day you're triggered by something you thought you buried. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're still healing, and healing is holy. Healing is warfare. Healing is worship. It's looking at what broke you and saying, you can't define me anymore. But you can't say that once and expect it to last forever. You've got to say it every time your flesh wants to agree with the lie. Every time your mind wants to revisit what God already redeemed. Every time the enemy whispers that you'll never be free. You've got to confront the voice that tells you to settle. To shrink, to shut down, because the you that God is raising up cannot afford to be inconsistent with your healing. You want wholeness, but keep making room for what hurt you. You want peace, but keep entertaining confusion. You want a future, but keep running back to your past. You want to be new but won't release the habits that built the old you. You want to be different but won't do anything different. Healing requires change, and change requires confrontation. You have to confront what triggers you. You have to confront the version of you that survives by isolating, overthinking, withdrawing, or overcompensating, because those habits are protecting the wound, not healing it. You don't need another escape. You need a strategy. You don't need another word. You need to walk in what God already said. You don't need to start over again. You need to stay in it this time. Stay in the room. Stay in the hard conversation. Stay in the habit. Stay in the process. Because healing doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in silence. Sometimes it looks like boundaries. Sometimes it looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like grieving what you thought you'd never have to let go of, but every day you choose healing over hiding, you're winning. Every day you sit with the pain instead of running from it, you're breaking chains. Every day you wake up and decide not to let what hurt you define you. You are reclaiming your identity. Healing is not the absence of pain. It's the ability to move forward in spite of it. It's the power to be honest with your story without letting it be your prison. And that kind of healing, it takes consistency. You have to show up daily to the altar of your own healing. You have to show up when the memories feel fresh, when the grief resurfaces, when the old behavior tries to creep back in. Because healing isn't just about moving on. It's about becoming whole. It's about remembering who you were before the trauma rewrote your narrative. And if you don't show up for that version of you, who will? This is deeper than motivation. This is spiritual maturity. This is emotional sobriety. This is transformation. And transformation doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the secret place where nobody claps for you. Where nobody knows what you're fighting, but you keep showing up anyway. That's how you heal. That's how you grow. That's how you become the healed version of yourself you've been praying to meet. Your pattern predicts your power. Not your passion, not your potential, not your prayers, but your patterns, because what you repeat reveals what you believe. It shows what you prioritize, what you've made space for, and what you're committed to. You can't speak about becoming powerful and live in a pattern of procrastination. You can't declare growth and keep repeating cycles of avoidance. You can't say you want to be used by God and still dance with distractions daily. Power doesn't just show up in the spotlight. Power is developed in the private places where patterns are forged in silence. There are gifts inside of you, visions God has placed in you, but your patterns are fighting your promise. You are praying for elevation while your habits are digging holes. You're asking for more while managing less with inconsistency. God isn't ignoring you. He's waiting on your rhythm to match your request. What you do repeatedly is shaping who you become, whether you like it or not. You don't drift into discipline. You decide into discipline. You don't stumble into strength. You build it through what you show up for every single day. We like to glamorize outcomes, but outcomes are built on patterns. You want peace, build a pattern of stillness. You want breakthrough, build a pattern of prayer. You want freedom, build a pattern of obedience. Patterns are the systems that your life operates under, and if you want to shift your life, you've got to shift your system. You can't keep asking for change but living the same. You can't claim you're ready for more but still hold on to what's been killing your focus. It doesn't matter how anointed you are, how talented you are, how gifted you are. If your patterns are inconsistent, your results will be too. We want to lay hands on purpose, but don't want to build the life that can carry it. We want God to bless us with more, but don't want to be faithful with our morning routine. We want to make impact, but can't manage inboxes, commitments, time, or our own emotions. That's not a calling problem, that's a pattern problem. There's power in discipline, and discipline is built through daily, intentional repetition. Your future is not waiting on a moment, it's waiting on a pattern. It's waiting on you to take authority over your time, your attention, and your tendencies. Because when you finally fix your pattern, you stop sabotaging your progress. Look at your daily life. Look at what you're feeding your spirit. Look at what you're speaking over yourself. Look at the time you're giving to things that don't serve your calling. Look at how quickly you abandon focus when you get bored. These are the things that are building or breaking your power. You keep asking God to increase you, but He's trying to align your life to handle what's coming. And that alignment comes through consistency, structure, repetition, and discipline. These are the things nobody claps for, but they are the things that produce the version of you that can carry the weight of your assignment. Power is not emotional, it's structural. Power is not just a feeling, it's a formation. You don't become powerful because you had a good day. You become powerful because your pattern said, I'm going to show up regardless of how I feel. You become powerful when your spirit becomes stronger than your mood, when your intention becomes stronger than your impulse, when your vision becomes stronger than your environment. You have to build a pattern that reinforces your purpose. You can't keep waiting on someone to come save your consistency. It's not about waiting on the perfect moment. It's about mastering your pattern. What you repeat becomes your reality. If you repeat chaos, you will live in chaos. If you repeat laziness, you will produce lack. If you repeat faith, you will birth results. If you repeat discipline, you will see fruit. There are no shortcuts around this truth. Some of us are frustrated not because God said no, but because our pattern said maybe. You've been too inconsistent to step into what you're asking for. You've been too unstable to carry what you've been praying for. It's not rejection, it's protection. Because if God gave it to you now, your pattern would waste it. But when your pattern becomes a reflection of heaven, your power begins to rise. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be planted. You do have to be committed. You do have to wake up and say, I'm going to keep doing this even when I don't see the result yet. Because patterns produce before results show up. Patterns form the foundation, and God builds on what you maintain. If you want to see different, you have to do different, and not just once. Daily. Over and over until the new becomes natural, until the discipline becomes your default. It's not about motivation, it's about maturity. Mature people don't rely on hype to stay consistent. They rely on vision. They rely on strategy. They rely on patterns, and your pattern is preaching. Your pattern is either testifying for your growth or against it. What does your pattern say about you when nobody's watching? Does it say you're focused? Does it say you're faithful? Does it say you're fruitful? Or does it testify to cycles of inconsistency? Bursts of effort followed by weeks of silence, inspiration that never leads to action. If you want to change your future, change what you do when the excitement dies down. Change what you repeat when no one's around. Build a pattern that honors your promise. Build a pattern that strengthens your soul. Build a pattern that produces power, because what you repeat is what you become, and what you become is what God will use to shift the world around you. Consistency is not glamorous, it's not loud, it's not always inspiring. It rarely gets applause, but it's the difference between potential and fulfillment, between calling and completion, between dreams and destiny. It is the quiet decision to keep showing up, the sacred discipline of staying faithful in the unseen, the small, the ordinary. Too many people are waiting for a big moment to prove their worth, not realizing the daily moments are what shape their value. It's easy to get excited about vision, but vision without consistency is just fantasy. Vision requires someone who will do the work when no one notices. It needs someone who will rehearse the message when no one is listening, build the strategy when no one is asking, and make the sacrifice when no one is watching. Because there is no divine acceleration without daily obedience. There is no favor that bypasses formation. God does not anoint chaos. He anoints order, and consistency is the order that invites the oil. You can't keep living in reaction and expect to produce fruit. You can't keep letting emotions drive your decisions and expect purpose to be fulfilled. You can't keep starting over every time it gets uncomfortable and expect to reach the place God is calling you to. Consistency isn't about how you feel. It's about what you're building. It's about what you value. If you value healing, you'll keep going back to the hard places and doing the internal work. If you value purpose, you'll keep showing up even when passion fades. If you value legacy, you'll keep planting even when the harvest hasn't shown up, because consistency is about belief. Do you believe that what you're doing matters even when you can't yet see the results? Do you believe that you are becoming what God called you to be, even when the progress feels slow? Do you believe that faithfulness in the small is enough for God to do something big? This is where so many of us fall short. Not because we aren't gifted, not because we aren't anointed, but because we haven't built the muscle of consistency. And make no mistake, it's a muscle. It has to be trained. It has to be developed. It has to be worked even when it's sore. You don't wake up consistent. You become consistent. You decide that today matters. You decide that discipline is more important than excitement. You decide that alignment matters more than applause. It's a maturity issue. It's a spiritual commitment to the process God placed you in, because God is not just looking for people who can start well. He's looking for people who can finish strong, and finishing doesn't come from bursts of energy. It comes from sustained effort, so you have to ask yourself, are you consistent in what you say you care about? Are your habits aligned with your goals? Is your lifestyle preaching the message your lips keep declaring? Because if not, it's time to confront the disconnect. It's time to close the gap between your declarations and your disciplines. It's time to recognize that you don't need more inspiration. You need more implementation. You need to take what you already know, what God has already spoken, and put it into motion, not once, not for a week. But until it becomes your rhythm, until it becomes your default, until it becomes who you are, not just what you do, there's a cost to inconsistency. It delays progress. It breeds frustration. It makes you doubt promises that were never the problem in the first place. God didn't fail. The vision wasn't wrong. You just stopped building. You stopped trusting. You stopped pushing when it got heavy, and that's what the enemy wants. He knows he can't cancel your calling, so he distracts your discipline. He makes you believe that your little effort doesn't matter, that your obedience in the ordinary isn't worth it, that if it's not visible, it's not valuable. But the devil is a liar. What you're building in silence is sacred. What you're building in private will have public impact. The moments you remain faithful, focused, and firm are multiplying in the spirit, and even if no one else sees it, heaven does. Every time you say yes to showing up, you're agreeing with God. You're telling your flesh it doesn't get the final say. You're telling your doubt it doesn't control your direction. You're telling your history it doesn't dictate your future. That kind of consistency breaks chains. That kind of consistency opens doors. That kind of consistency shifts atmospheres. Because it's not just about keeping a routine, it's about becoming a vessel that God can trust, a vessel that stays ready, a vessel that remains in position even when the promise seems far off. That's the kind of person God uses. That's the kind of person who carries weight in the spirit, not the most emotional, not the loudest, but the most rooted, the one who can be counted on, the one who doesn't flinch under pressure, the one who knows the power of being planted. If you want to make impact, you have to commit to endurance. If you want to fulfill purpose, you have to stop letting feelings lead. If you want to live with authority, you have to train your habits to match your anointing. Your future is not waiting on someone else to validate you. It's waiting on you to be consistent with what's already in your hands. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep going. You just have to keep building. You just have to keep believing that what you're doing matters, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because consistency is where miracles are born. Consistency is where faith becomes fruit. Consistency is where purpose becomes reality. The truth is, consistency is the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. It's the quiet strength that builds legacy, the unseen faithfulness that turns vision into victory. You can have fire, you can have gifts, you can have revelation. But if you don't have consistency, you'll keep starting over at the same level, wondering why break through never fully arrive. God isn't just blessing your desire, He's watching your discipline. He's not just looking at your potential, He's shaping your pattern. And when your daily actions start to echo your divine assignment, that's when the shift begins. That's when doors open. That's when healing sticks. That's when purpose becomes power. Because consistency is not just about what you do. It's about who you are becoming. So keep showing up, keep building, keep trusting, and let your rhythm testify louder than your words ever could.